So we have been working with KPMG from last several years in terms of implementation, and we wanted to talk about the implementation or the GRC journey London Stock Exchange embarked upon about 6 months back. But before I go there, just there is a lot of things happening in the world right now, given the macro conditions right now. You see the risk and compliance evolving quite frequently right now. Things are changing dynamically. How do you see that the organizations should be doing, what they should be doing proactively to manage it? Rob, let me start with you.
Yeah, I think we've seen the risk and sort of compliance silos, and indeed the risk types within risk, those silos sort of break down, and really much more of a business view of risk. So first line wanting to know sort of risk profile across the whole piece as opposed to an individual risk type. And then I think on other topics like sustainability, the sort of themes cut across many of the risk types that we've looked at traditionally and sort of drive that more holistic view across sort of risk, compliance, and potentially even the third line as well.
Yeah. John, would you like to add?
Yeah, so risk of dehydration, getting a bit hot. So, I mean, I think you're right. You know, the world is obviously incredibly complex, fast-moving, interconnected. All the VUCA things that we absolutely know to be true. Risk velocity is increased. Everything's interconnected. I think what we're seeing is risk functions and risk professionals being asked to take a much more real-time, data-led view of risk profiles. You know, things like continuous controls monitoring as well, so residual risk positions as well, becoming much more urgent and more real-time, and that kind of backward-looking, you know, PowerPoint production 3 months after an event is just no longer going to cut it in this world. So I think, you know, and I would say this because I'm at a GRC Summit, but clearly to be able to do that kind of analysis, you do need to enable technology, you do need to be data-led, and you do need to make use of technologies like continuous controls monitoring. I think, sorry.
No, go ahead, sorry.
I think the other thing I would say is that to adapt to this world, I think the risk professionals in this room, and I'm sure a lot of them do it already, are going to need to sort of translate some of our risk terminology that we all know and love, that can be a little bit dry sometimes, and make it much more relevant for business users, people in the first line who we kind of know historically have had a sort of a mixed attitude towards risk in terms of capability and motivation. So I think the more we can bring it to life in, you know, true business terms, customer terms, you know, pounds, shilling, and pence. I think that will help with this complex world in which we live.
Thanks, John. And that leads me to another thing that, John, you have been working with a number of customers across different industry, and how do you see the customers embarking on this GRC journey, and what are the focus areas? Anything particular you would like to call out?
Yeah, so I guess I've been doing this for quite a long time now, and I think it's fair to say that the implementations are getting better, which is a good sign. I think it's important that organisations know the starting point, where they're coming from in terms of the quality and maturity of their framework, the maturity of the actual execution against that framework, understanding of accountabilities, responsibilities, all those things to make sure they understand, you know, the status quo of the organisation, and then make sure that that informs the RFP process around a potential GRC tooling or sets of tools. I think I'd add that people are learning around business change as well. I think once you've actually selected the tool, you know, it's a cliche about plan, but the business change piece around stakeholder engagement, training, communications, all those good things, understanding your data model, all of those items I think are incredibly important, and to approach the whole thing holistically rather than just as a technology implementation. And then the final thing, I think Rob might agree, is out of the box. It now seems to be the mantra and the way forward. No customizations, but no changes. Keep it on the upgrade path. Keep it simple, and I think that's why organisations are having increased success.
Okay, and Rob, how do you see that right now, the journey you are on?
Yeah, I think a lot of what John's just said resonates. I think we've really avoided customization kind of as the first rule of pretty much every meeting we've had, and I think we've also been willing to sort of look at the actual underlying frameworks and change those to sort of avoid the customization approach as well. So not just saying it's requirements on the tooling. And I think equally important is making sure there's actually data flowing into it. So you have the data-driven approach that John just described, rather than just sort of a nice house with no furniture, so to speak.
Absolutely. And just since morning, we are hearing about interconnectedness of risk. How do you see that the risk, enterprise risk, cyber risk, or UK SOX or operational resilience, how do you see these are connected? Let me start with
Yeah. So I think the way I think about enterprise risk, there's sort of a set of principles that apply, I think, equally well across all those different dimensions around like risk identification, risk assessment, risk management, risk mitigation. And I think they kind of apply equally well across all the different risk stripes and frameworks that we would then think about. And I think the key thing is really, well, when we've been building out frameworks and developing them, not just at LSEG, but in my previous shops as well, really just keeping those principles in mind rather than sort of solving each different piece of that puzzle separately.
John.
Yeah, I guess to try and picture your organisation as all of its core business processes and customer outcomes and all those sort of try and bust those silos that Rob mentioned earlier around the traditional functional approach to considering risks. So if you can sort of map out your organisation and then map your risk taxonomy along the top, you should end up with that kind of matrix view, which then gives you the ability to look top to bottom, but also left to right, and to aggregate different risk types or aggregate different channels or products or customer journeys together to give that kind of informed view. And as I mentioned, I work in financial services. I think the operational resilience requirements have really helped organisations sort of flip themselves on their side and think about those end-to-end customer outcomes and look at risk in a whole different way. So I think themes like ESG, UK SOX, will be equally applicable. And again, having a data-led approach with a central system of record to be able to sort of flip your organisation from lots of different angles will be hugely helpful, particularly in the world where we don't know what the next thing is going to be. There'll be something else, right?
That's great. No, that's what we are seeing across a number of implementations worldwide. That definitely preparation, spending that time on your organization structure, getting your data right. That's the foundation of getting the right implementation, and staying more close to out of the box. Yes, that box can be a little bit. Sometimes you have to go a little bit outside the box, but I think the more closer you are, in long term, you avoid all these customizations and upgrades and different aspects. So let me ask, one advice would you like to give, Rob, in terms of on the GRC journey to the audience, that what should be that?
I think we probably covered the main ones, to avoid customizations. I think not forgetting about the data, but equally being willing to sort of tweak frameworks to go back to the first rule of avoiding customizations.
Great. John.
And I agree, but I would say don't underestimate and underinvest in the business change side of things. I think if you really want to drive adoption, user engagement, etc., post system going live, I think that business change aspect is so key.
Yeah, I think that's one area that we have seen that everybody underestimates that change management, what is required, and that process should be carefully thought throughout the process. That how you're going to roll out and the actual implementation. After the implementation, I think after that, 3 to 6 months are critical when you make awareness to the organization's training and you roll out the whole program. So that should be part of the plan as well. Yeah. Happy to take any questions if you would like to ask any questions on the GRC journey from the audience. Yes, Steve.
It's not so much a question, but an observation. I'm at Barclays and we are on this journey again. And like everybody else at the table, we are stressing the need to avoid customisation. But I do think, as risk professionals, we need to be prepared to challenge the status quo, because otherwise there is a danger that you get a huge groupthink across the industry, and material weaknesses go unseen until the bad thing occurs. So sort of stay within the box, use the system, but do ask the difficult questions of yourselves, of your vendor, of your intermediaries as to, have you really covered everything that you want?
Absolutely, completely agree with you that I think we need to challenge our processes. What we have done in the past, not necessarily everything holds true. So we should challenge those processes, and it's a journey to realign some of those processes. So, anything, last comments, Rob, John, from your side?
Well, I just think it's a good observation. I think if you can challenge those business requirements at pace and with rigor and with the right stakeholders in the room, and make those informed decisions, then you still maintain that cadence, that pace, which is obviously a great advantage of avoiding customizations. But I've worked with a number of clients who have deferred putting particular apps in, or done some configurations, customizations outside of the box for very good business reasons, and it has a cost and it has an upgrade implication sometimes, but for good business reasons.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the panelists. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.